Through the Keyhole is fueled by Vanessa House Beer Company, located in Automobile Alley at 118 Northwest 8th Street in Oklahoma City. Stop by the tap room and try the legendary 401k lager or the refreshing Destination Wedding Cerveza with salt and lime. Vanessa House is always brewing something fun like the Pog Hard Seltzer or their sweet and tasty sours. Great beers for a hot Oklahoma summer as we march towards football season. Stop by the Vanessa House Tap Room at 118 Northwest 8th Street in Oklahoma City for good drinks and family-friendly good times. Kids and pets are welcome. Yes, I mentioned kids and pets in the same sentence. Vanessa House Beer Company, the best beer in Oklahoma City. Please drink responsibly.
It's caught. Hollywood! Lights! Camera! Action! Hollywood Brown! CD Lamb still running! It's a corner! CD! For the TD!
People don't know what it is to be champions. Oklahoma invented it.
Welcome to Through the Keyhole, an Oklahoma football fan podcast. I am Peyton Guthrie, one of the hosts, and joined by always, finally, we got the full group back together. We've got Matt Burton as our main producer, the only producer, to be honest with you. I do a sham of a job when he's not here. Brady and Alan to take care of us, make sure we get everyone on the road and keep us on our show notes. But before we start anything whatsoever, I want to say thank you to Vanessa House, our title sponsor. Helps us keep our lights on as they support this micro business as we talk about Oklahoma football or college athletics at large. Also, thank you to our Patreon supporters for helping us out. Again, that really helps us bring on guests, for especially on the Patreon side of things, for our Patreon-only podcast as we do previews of teams coming up in Oklahoma's schedule. We've done Missouri. We've done Texas so far. We're going to try to get some, potentially try to get land a big fish for Ole Miss and some other bloggers and writers to talk about teams as we're coming up in the off season. And if you'd like to support us over there, that's on patreon.com/through the keyhole. But you're listening to us live, kind of, on podcast and for free. If you're going to do that, make sure you rate and review us. It really, really helps out. I think right now we are the third most reviewed OU podcast on Apple.
One more review. One more review than we are.
Will be third. Okay,
take
let's
that,
do
West
that.
of Everest.
Yeah, take them down one at a time.
Should I put in a review?
We should all put in reviews. To be honest with you. We haven't done that at all.
Hey, Lee,
Grant,
that, sorry. Tell us how fourth place is.
And then also we have a public website, keyholepod.com. That's where any of our free articles or free content, the dreaded word, goes out live for college football fans and Oklahoma Sooner fans. We're actually be talking about one of the articles posted on there today by Alan Kinney, setting the expectations. But before we roll right into the show, we got to do the whole how you doing bit. So Matt, how you doing?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Just housed a Jersey Mike's sub, so feeling really good. We're ready to go now. Shout out to Jersey Mike's, man. It always delivers.
Yeah, shout out.
Yeah. Did you do it Mike's way?
I had a cheesesteak, so no Mike's way.
Mike's
but
way,
I am
yeah.
always Mike's way. When I get a cold sub, it's always Mike's.
Yeah, you know what, man? I was in there one night, and there's a kid running the grill. He was making a cheesesteak, and he was doing something special to it. I was like, man, that looks really good. He's like, oh, yeah. Like,
what are you doing?
Special.
You magician. You magician
exactly.
back there. What are you doing?
Basically, it was a Chipotle cheesesteak, but he also added bacon to it. It was so good, man. I was like, all right, I'm sold, man.
Alan, I'm not going to point out where you're at, but in your neck of the woods, do they have breakfast at Jersey Mike's? Because I recently heard that some Jersey Mike's serve breakfast. And
I'd love to try it.
If Oklahoma ever had breakfast Jersey Mike's, I might never eat anything else again.
Yeah,
so thank goodness they don't, actually.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And Alan, I mean, we've already heard your voice, but how you doing over there? I see the Peloton, and you're talking about Jersey Mike sitting next to the Peloton, so I'm assuming it's copacetic on your side.
Right. Quite the dichotomy there, right? Yeah, no, I'm good. I mean, Memorial Day is always a great holiday weekend. As much as I really don't like the summer, 3-day weekend, everybody's really, it seems like everybody's got like an agenda, got stuff to do, or, there's like going to be parties around your neighborhood. Pool might be open, if you know somebody who's got a pool. So yeah, no, I mean, this is good times.
And then last but certainly not least in our hearts, Brady, how are you doing? And how was your Memorial Day weekend? I totally blanked on that.
It was very productive. Got a lot of stuff done in the yard. And then I took the GF and our dog to campus on what was the hottest day of the week. So I don't know why we chose yesterday to do it, but it was good. I do want to point out when Alan was answering the question, he mentioned like it's Memorial Day, no, like even though I hate, and I thought he was about to say I hate Memorial Day. I hate everything it stands for. It's just, it's like all of a sudden, Alan just has a take that we're just like, oh my God, problematic.
Nuclear.
Our sponsors are falling off. Oh God, there they go.
Well, like I will say this year's Memorial Day was kind of marred, obviously, by the passing of Bill Walton, who was
What a bummer.
I know, man, but you know the way I look at it though is like that guy did some living. You know what I mean? Like if you put as much into life as he did, you know what I mean? Like 71 years old, man, you did it right. Like that's especially knowing he was so sick recently and he was still out and about and you know getting down. I mean, that's a real testament to him, and you know what a special character he was. You know.
Yeah, it's not even funny. I mean, because there are a lot of clips of his like funny like commentating going on all over Twitter, and that's great. But there's nothing funny about this 3-minute video, but it's just Bill Walton talking about bringing the Celtics to a Grateful Dead concert because they had never heard of it, and that you can't like what Alan just talked about. Just watch that video if you have time. Like it's on Twitter. If I find it, I'll retweet it. So Brady Does Sports. But yeah, he was a special type of cat.
Yeah, you know, like back in the day, he and Snapper Jones did NBA broadcasts on NBC, TNT, and you know, and I can remember this one, you know, they would just sit there and bicker back and forth, and it was actually hilarious. But I can just remember this one time watching, it was like Lakers Heat on a random Sunday afternoon in April, like, you know, mid-90s. And he's like, Del Harris surveying the Los Angeles crowd, asking them, reach out, touch Shaquille O'Neal's body, make him golden. And that's how it ended. Like just it's like the middle of the second quarter. Like,
dude,
like
I like well, first off, like
free throw up and good.
We all know, we all know that like how awesome of a commentator. And like, and again, I know he wasn't some people's cup of tea. Like calling games, they want the tightened up, laced up. He was right up my alley calling games. Like I want to hear all the weird stuff every single time. But he was maybe like him and Kareem are like on tiers of their own as far as like greats in college basketball. Like he might be the best college basketball player of all time. Like my dad, even like I texted him, letting him know he was like, man, he was like, that was my like hero growing up, like my hero in basketball because he was such a good player. And then obviously with all the injuries, whenever he got into the NBA, like that just kind of, took away from what made him so good. But he is right up my alley when it came to calling games, doing color commentary, and just kind of keeping it fun and loose. Him and Dave Pasch were just a perfect combination because Dave Pasch would just play the most perfect straight man of all time. There's a clip. I mean, one of my favorites is, he would bring Dave Pasch some gifts sometimes. And this one time he brought him dirt from Temecula. And he was like, well, what do you do with that? And he just takes the dirt out and starts rubbing it all over himself. And it's just like, it's so perfect because he'd be talking about that or like doing mushrooms in the Himalayas. And then Dave Pasch will go and Franklin misses the front end of a 1-and-1. And then it's right back to
They were setting the scene for some random game, and he's got sunglasses on, and I think it's like the Maui Invitational. He's like, it's a great day. It's basketball. It's ESPN. I just got laid. And then it cuts to like, No, I mean, say what you want about this particular dude, but if Bill Simmons is talking about the NBA from the 70s or the 80s, I really like a lot of the stuff, like a lot of his thoughts. And, talking about Bill Walton, the player in the NBA, Converse ruined his career. That whole concept of basketball shoes before they became very scientifically engineered to not kill the careers of the people who wore them is so fascinating to me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I know we've talked plenty about this, but just if you haven't read Breaks of the Game by David Halberstam, chronicling it's a season during the 70s with the Portland Trailblazers, and I believe it's right after they traded Bill Walton. It's maybe the best sports book ever written.
Ooh.
And there's a good section in there on Walton too.
This is before the cocaine, right? In the 80s.
Oh, I mean, I would say it's I'd say it's the dawn of the
or the
cocaine.
origin.
Yeah.
Oh well.
All right. Yes. R.I.P. to the legend. And now we go on to talk about Oklahoma football. Our first set of business here is talking about Alan. Okay. We can't hear me. Thank God. Talking about Alan Kinney's article over on keyholepod.com, setting the expectation for the Oklahoma Sooners. Alan, you mentioned in your article the idea that Brent Venables is doing everything right in the big pictures. Recruiting's getting better. Recruiting is on par, if not better, than anything that was under Lincoln Riley. The defense has made a massive advanced analytics and counting stats improvement, and the offense seems to be able to return to some form of those Riley offenses without needing to necessarily rely on a number one overall draft pick at quarterback to kind of get the job done. Is getting it more done with team play, focus, scheme, and not necessarily as a big time individual talent from that perspective. And then the one big glaring thing all four of us talked about was special teams, and he's gone out and hired someone to fix that, hopefully. Where do you see this team? And you mentioned like, hey, Oklahoma seems to be getting better. Brent Venables seems to be doing all the things right, but they're about to run into a schedule, which I believe is the top 10 hardest schedule in the nation, according to Bill Conley, one of the hardest P4 schedules out there. What do you think will happen for Oklahoma? I mean, what sort of improvement can you see from a big picture side, and how you're going to be able to, if you have to, divorce that from the very real counting stats of wins and losses?
Yeah, I mean, to kind of back up, what prompted me to write this was reading through, the discussion I believe with CBSSports.com did recently in the last couple of weeks, where they go through and they ranked every coach in the Power Five, and I think Brent Venables came in somewhere in the middle. Like, arguing about those kinds of things is just silly to me because it matters so much what kind of criteria you're using, who does more with less, or who would you hire tomorrow if you were trying to build a program, all that different kind of stuff. But I think it's easy to look at Brent Venables' performance through two seasons and say, okay, he's 16-10 at OU. That's not particularly good, but he improved last year on their record improved last year. We'll see what happens. Like, the more that I've looked back at what Venables inherited, I mean, the situation was bad. Like I myself underestimated just how bad like Lincoln Riley had let it get. But, looking back at it, I think the way that I would describe it is like Riley is like, whereas, the way I describe him is like he's an inventor almost. Like, he could take whatever parts that he had as disposable, and he could come up with something, particularly on offense, obviously, really effective. And he won a lot of games that way. But it was scrambling every year to kind of reconstitute things or make the most of what you had, and not like building a sustainable program that was, things that, that would be consistent. And I think that Venables is really, making the most of that kind of opportunity to refashion OU after that, So the thing being though, like that's a long process. And I think that looking at this year, it's very possible in my mind, like OU could continue to improve, be a better team than they have been. And, all the different advanced stats say that OU improved last year. Obviously the record improved. But I mean, with this schedule, and there are so many it broke so poorly for OU in terms of, how the schedule sets up that, I mean, they could be like a 7-win team, 6 wins, and still be a better football team objectively than they were a year ago. So I'm kind of just trying to prime everybody for that potential outcome.
Yeah, I mean, uh, it's a smart way of thinking about it, because so much of this is somewhat outside of Brent's control, right? I mean, he's controlling the controllable, but who they get, who they play, how they're going to play, what those teams are recruiting, what those teams' rosters look like, what those teams' NIL situations are at this point in time. OU has no control over that. They have to be as good as they can be. And at times, that's where you kind of run into stuff. Now, if Oklahoma truly is, I think last week we talked about it, the worst defense they'll play is South Carolina's, and they're ranked 36th according to SP Plus. That's rough going. I think Houston this year will be in the 92nd, projected at this point in time via SP Plus. So that's something OU is going to have to get used to, just playing just more talented teams, and it's something we've talked about a lot. Is Oklahoma's leaving, in our opinion. I don't want to speak for everybody. I'll say our opinion. A more of a coach-driven, schematic, strategery league, going into more. We have very large defensive linemen and very large offensive linemen. Figure it out, type of a thing, and kind of walk your way through that. And there isn't really enough how this schedule shook out for Oklahoma. There isn't really enough wiggle room. Because some of the stuff that Alan's talked about before was saying, like, yeah, the SEC is big and bad, but it's only big and bad for like 5 teams, and then you should be able to beat the other teams. But Oklahoma's got a tough draw 2 years in a row. I would assume next year will be much easier because Ole Miss is going to be a shell, Mizzou is going to be a shell. I mean, this is the year they're running into potentially the best versions of Ole Miss and best versions of Missouri that we will have, and we'll have to kind of figure that out and kind of move from that direction. But Brady, you and Alan were kind of really talking about this deeply in our Discord as we're discussing this point. Oklahoma potentially has like 5 coin toss games. I think even, potentially 6, depending on how you feel about Texas. Texas seems very difficult to win. I don't think it's a coin toss, but, they've got like 5 games, which they could just lose. And that's just within conference play. If he does, I don't want to go straight doom stuff here, but what do you see? How are you measuring success for this team? I mean, or would you be satisfied with the recruiting staying on point? Teams are playing well. It's just like OU's missing it on the edges. Is that going to be enough for you if they go like 8-4, 7-5, but they're in it most of these games, if not all of these games?
Yeah, I mean, 8-4 is going to be that will be the you pass that threshold, you have a successful season. Anything that happens after that, whether you've achieved 8 wins first, or if you get 4 losses first, it's like, all right, if you want to have a successful season, you can either you've met the win threshold or don't lose another game. And so, obviously you want to lose. If you're going to lose 4 games, you want that to be much later in the season. But taking out context and nuance, because we don't know the context and the nuance of OU's losses in 2024 yet, just yet. And it's kind of silly to just sit here and say like, well, if they're all close losses, or if 2 or the 3 are close losses, or blah, 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 blah. Removing all that, like, that's why it's just like 8-4 is about the least acceptable successful season, which would mean, well, is 7-5 successful? It's not successful, but I wouldn't see 7-5 as disastrous, because then you can kind of add the context of, well, of those 5 losses, what do they look like? Are some of these losses obviously due to having a first-year starting quarterback trying to learn the position, learn college football, the speed, acclimating to all that in the SEC, and some of these games on the road in some hostile environments? Like, is it because of that, or is it because Brent Venables calls timeout time and time again, early in the 3rd quarter, and we don't have a timeout saved in the 4th quarter for a 1-possession game? Is it a 1-possession game? Does OU still have chances to win these games that they end up losing? Because you can say, okay, well, you get that hard stuff out of the way, and like you mentioned, Peyton, the following season, teams like Ole Miss and Missouri will probably on paper not be as strong as they appear to be in May for the 2024 season. You then start to apply the same logic that we did going into the 2023 season, where It's like, okay, some of those close losses, they need to turn into wins so that we can see that Brent is the guy to lead the program. And that happened in 2023. That's why we're still kind of hopeful for the future. So, I mean, Alan's right to bring this up because it's just a completely and utterly different animal. And OU has beaten SEC teams over the last, over its history. They've beaten great teams over its history. The difference
famously
is
one of Bob Stoops' favorite wins against Tennessee.
Yeah, a guy who won a national championship, played for a handful of others, is like, one of my favorite wins I coached was Baker Mayfield saving my ass in Knoxville. Sometimes I wish he would just not talk. Why did OU baseball choke against OSU in the Big 12 championship? Somebody was there. And I would not be surprised if somebody gave them a pep talk before that game, said, well, look, go out there and go win. And then OSU scored 9 runs. Anywho, anywho, no, it just really kind of depends on OU acclimating to playing teams that they would otherwise see like in a big non-conference game in the Big 12 or in a bowl game week in and week out. Now, the thing that I always try to stress to people is our schedule is tough. Everybody else's schedule is tough because we're fucking on it too. Like we are not. Do not copy paste wacky, funky Big 12 Oklahoma that can't tackle, that's allergic to being physical, and just copy paste them to the SEC, because that's not the Oklahoma they're going to get. We've got question marks. Every other team that we play has question marks. I mean, Alabama has the biggest question mark. Nick Saban's not there. What is it now? Are they talented still? Of course they are. Are they going to be a formidable opponent? Of course they will be. Nick Saban's not there anymore. What does that do? So, is Lane Kiffin going to be able to lead a team of mercenaries? Is Missouri actually good? Is Auburn going to take a big jump in year 2, or are they still kind of an below average football team with an awful quarterback? Is Tennessee actually good? Or was 2 years ago a flash in the pan, and they've got a cool quarterback and a cool defensive player whose name I can't remember. Other than that, they're meh. And if all those questions are, relatively reasonably like result in, OU schedule isn't as tough as it once appeared, you've got to think OU's going to win a few of those games. They're going to win 4 games in the non-conference. They'll probably win South Carolina. So you just start at the very base with 5 wins. If you've got 4 or 5 other coin toss games, OU is probably going to win 2 or 3 of them. 3 or 4 in the event that this is a truly special season and Brent is actually like destined to be the next great head coach at OU. So a lot of stuff we have to learn, but and I understand what Alan's going for with this article, and kind of in our back and forth, I understand where he's coming from. It's a different animal, but I think it's an animal that OU is prepared for. That doesn't mean we're not going to get dick slapped in like, Oxford or Auburn or something like that. And it's not like we're not going to have a bad Saturday and everyone's going to be like, see, they're not SEC ready, despite the fact that we've already beaten like 2 or 3 SEC teams. But, we get them today, so that will happen, unfortunately. OU will lose a close game. They've got a first-year starting quarterback who's going to learn how to play the position at this level. So there's going to be some tough days, but I mean, I think OU is prepared for it. They're as prepared as they can be for it, considering the things Allen set up with what Brent Venables inherited when Lincoln Riley left. With that much experience and talent on defense coming back, I just don't see how 5 losses or more is realistic. I think that that's equally as realistic. And I told this to Allen in Discord. I think that if you just sit there and say OU is going to lose 5 or 6 games, okay, you can have that opinion. But if I have the opinion that they're going to go to the college football playoff, you need to give me the same like benefit of the doubt of like, okay, you can have like, I could see that too. Like both of them can be equally crazy, but they are equal is the whole point.
Yeah, that's the quality of the opinion from that side of it. I mean, yeah, I think Oklahoma losing 6 games would be hard for me to see at this point in time. But I didn't see them losing 7 games in Brent's first year either, but the roster's been built up to a degree where I have to think they can withstand this stuff. And Brent has learned not to call a stupid timeout, when to go for it, when not to go for it. That I think they can learn from that. To me, I'm buying the maturity of Brent Venables as a head coach for me to lean more towards 8-5, 9-3 than 7-5 or 6-6 at this point in time. Now, especially if the special teams gets cleaned up in some way, shape, or form. If that special teams coach can magically teach all the kickers how to kick straight and punters how to punt high and far. I think Oklahoma can squeeze out a couple of games in which they may not be able to. Because Brent, we've seen him be aggressive. And, Brady's going to not like this, but be aggressive on special teams, faking it, stuff like that, wanting to, conjure up some magic. He's got that defensive coordinator, risk taker part of him. It's like, hey, we need a big play. We need to do something. Let's take control of this game. Brent has that. He's not fair catching everything. He's not like, hey, just roll up the punches. He wants to be the one to deliver a knockout punch. So because of that, I think sometimes you're going to swing and miss, and get hit with a counter or something like that. So, and same thing like Brent's defenses. They give up plenty of boom plays, but they also get a lot of sacks, a lot of interceptions, a lot of havoc plays that you should have to work on. You should be able to handle that. To me, that's kind of a side note of why I think Brent is okay, more than okay, of Jackson Arnold actually being a little more of a risk taker, because he's like, hey, we'll get him back. It's okay. We'll go. At times you see those types of teams being able to kind of withstand it, knowing, hey, we also have knockout power. It's fine. We can get up. We can hit them back. So that will be something that'd be very interesting to watch Oklahoma as it tries to knock out an LSU, knock out an Alabama. You're not just trying to outlast them like we were the last few years, especially 2021 is horrible. Just like we're playing down to the final whistle of the game and hoping a field goal goes through to win. Like Oklahoma and Brent are going to try, when Brent played Nebraska and just laid it on them. He's just like, I understand how to beat teams badly. Like Arkansas State had Butch Jones taking a knee crying on the sideline. I mean, my only regret is that he didn't try to go for, 79, whatever, at that point in time. But I will say 6-6 makes it hard. 6-6 makes it really hard. 7-5 makes it hard, to be honest with you. And depending on the losses, like if Oklahoma walks into Dallas and gets steamrolled to a degree, let's say they lose by 14 plus, that really sucks. Regardless of how logical you can be about it. If Texas goes on and goes 11-1 and goes to the playoffs again, the fan base may say, hey, we don't got the guy. Like we got to figure this out and we got to move forward. In Oklahoma, as much as we are calm and collected and, very chilled out fan base, Oklahoma does not suffer, and I don't want to say this about Brent in this way, but Oklahoma does not suffer a fool at head coach very long. If you're bad, they go. And Brent is pretty much right where he needs to be roster-wise in the old way of college football, which is you say you hire a head coach, you say you've got 5 years. And he's building this team as if he is on a 5-year plan. I'm assuming Joe C signed off on it. I'm assuming they all signed off on it. He's on a 5-year plan. Normal college football now, you're on what is it, like a 2-year plan? Like you've got to get this roster flipped and you got to start succeeding because of the portal, because of NIL. And so my only concern is that if Brent were to lose 5 games, right? You can say, well, due to where the roster was when the head coach left and we came in, if I'm a booster, I can say, well, year 1, you gave everyone a blanket chance. You should have just cut people. You should have brought people in. Like you decided to have these morals in a game in which there are no morals. Like you put self-imposed limits on yourself and the program in which now actions have consequences. If he were to go 6-6, 7-5 or something like that, my assumption is some bigger people with bigger paychecks would probably bring up some of those points and say, let's get this across the board. Now, if he's maintaining these relationships, obviously he's doing the Sooner Caravan. He's touring all of Oklahoma. He's getting everyone under the tent. So maybe if it is a bad year, he can get people to say, what do you need? let's get this across the board. I like you. You've done well. I see what you're doing. It is, the infrastructure is working. We just haven't broke through yet. What do you need to break through? I think the Dominic Williams signing is an example of that. If Oklahoma truly did pay above market, which, according to I think it's either NBC Sports or 24/7 to kind of ranked how much NIL dollars certain positions should get, and they said defensive tackles should be getting anywhere from $300,000 to $600,000. If that's true, then Oklahoma did overpay, but not by the amount in which everyone says they did. But this could be a time of the supporters, the boosters, administrations just saying what has to happen for us to get to where we need to be. To me, that's good. That's good support and movement. But now if it's 7-5 and 3 of those losses are by 20 points or something like that, and Oklahoma just looks embarrassed, that's a lot bigger thing. That's a harder pill to swallow for people if you keep coming back to them and keep asking them, hey, we're about to break through, we're going to do it. Then you kind of look like a Tom Herman type or something like that, where it's like, if we just get, just get over the edge, or like, obviously he's already better than blanking that former Nebraska head coach, because he's actually Scott Frost, because he's actually winning football games. But it's kind of like that. We're almost there. It's just right there. That was kind of my fear early on of Brant. It was like, could he win on the margins? He seems to be making a program to where he won't have to worry about the margins. If you keep bringing in 5-star defensive tackles and defensive linemen and stuff like that, those margins increase so large you don't really have to play in them very often. So I'm happy about that. But Alan, I think it's just a really, really strong point of saying, hey guys, Oklahoma may very well just be better across every single stat, every single yards per play and all that type of stuff. But then on, as Rob Bowen calls it, the fan stats, you might go from 10-3 to 8-4 or 8-5, something like that. And we're going to have to square that, and make sense of that. Any other thoughts or questions or concerns on that part?
I wanted to bring up, because you kind of touched on it, and I think this is the big driving factor, because I think it's really easy. I think most fans would understand, you go 10-3 in the Big 12 with the bowl loss. If you win 8 games in the SEC, that's fairly comparable, right? Like no one's going to get mad at you from going to 10 wins to 8, and they're going to see that as a like there is a clear sign of evidence of disappointment. It's like, no, I think most people with brains understand, like, yeah, tougher conference. My biggest thing is, and we talked about this a few weeks ago when we were talking about how hard the schedule is for OU and how easy it is for Texas. And I had this, stupid, admittedly, like macho man kind of idea of like, I want OU to have the toughest road, like silly stuff like that.
Yeah.
That truly comes from, I'm just tired of watching OU football skirt away, playing like teams that have no business being on the same field with us, keeping them in the game, and you win by like 13, 14 points, 17 points, and then you call it good. And then OU just keeps doing it. They'll occasionally beat a good team. They'll beat Texas. Then they win the Big 12, and then they get, bitch slapped in a playoff game or whatever. I'm tired of that version of OU football. And so to me, it makes a lot of sense that whether it would have been Bob Stoops or Lincoln Riley, if either one of them went up to the quote unquote donors and said, hey, like I need more money to get X, Y, and Z, I could understand why some of those donors are like, why? We don't need to spend all this money because we're just going to win the Big 12. Just get us there and then be the head coach and coach us to victory. We've got Heisman quarterbacks. Like, we don't need anything else. We don't need to spend any more money because we're just going to accidentally win this conference more times than not. So, like, what's the big fuss? That would not happen in the SEC, because if you beat Iowa State, like bad Iowa State, if you beat bad Kansas, if you beat any of these bad Big 12 teams by 10 points, we get on the podcast afterwards and we're all like, what the fuck was that? We are all angry. If OU beats South Carolina by 14 points at home after let's say we lose to Texas or even win, nobody's going to be upset. Now, if they play sloppily, we will acknowledge that they played sloppy, but I don't think I will be that mad. It's like, this is a new challenge. So maybe 10 years from now, I'll be like, why are they barely beating South Carolina? But if you just win in the SEC, it's important. It's good. It's a good thing. There's going to be no like fire this guy and like cut these scholarships or whatever, all that silly stuff that fans say. And I think that applies to the event of if OU, like, let's say they lose 4 games, 3 of them are really close. Brent can then say like, hey, we lost because the offensive line couldn't hold up against like these awesome defensive linemen in the SEC. We need to allocate a lot of our resources to that. And if we had that, these 3 losses wouldn't have happened. We'd be in the playoff and we'd be a national title contender like right now. And then they're like, okay, yeah, that's a clear, like, we get it. Like, we need that. That doesn't happen in the Big 12. I think it could happen in the SEC. So the whole point is just retain your honor in the first year, win as many games as possible. If you get to 8, great. If you get to 9, just cherry on top, bonus, cool. You're like in good standing. And then anything that kind of happens in a bad way, I think you can just turn right around and say, we need to double down on this or allocate our resources this way because we're good everywhere else. So that to me is important.
Yeah, no, and that's actually a really good way to look at it, in terms of, stress testing the program, right? And saying like, where are we deficient? The thing that would concern me is like, it's one thing to be like, you don't need these resources, for example, to win the Big 12, but like, what would concern me more is like, okay, we can get you these resources, but not with him as the head coach, right? That's where the real, the crux of what I'm trying to get at is like, I think that it used to be that there was I don't know. I mean, it seemed like everybody kind of assumed, oh, okay, well, now in the era of the transfer portal, you can just go and find a new team almost online. Well, no, not really. I mean, not a good one unless you're really willing to pay through the nose for it, right? And my point being, like, you have to, if I'm all in favor of like failing fast. I think that's a good, that's a good thing. And if we see OU go out there and I mean, really look unprepared or look like they're not progressing, any of that stuff this year, I mean, then we should judge that accordingly, right? And, but if it's, if OU goes out there, plays well, but still only wins 7 games, like, that's when, the potential for, I think, a lot of the, outside noise, the stuff like the kind of the demoralizing stuff, the talk about, oh, this coach is on the hot seat. He needs to win X number of games next year, blah, blah, blah. Like that stuff starts popping up. Recruiting all of a sudden gets harder, or unless you go out and throw a big extension at Brent Venables, but then why would you do that if you hadn't, if he's, if he really is on a hot seat, you're not really sure about him. The thing that's what I'm trying to get at though, is like people need to be more cognizant now. I mean, OU's got a roster that, one thing that I think we figured out was that OU didn't have a ton of guys that other programs wanted when Lincoln Riley up and left. I mean, it was kind of thought it was going to be this fiend frenzy on OU's roster, and that wasn't the case, right? That'll be different this year. I mean, they've landed some big guys, especially on defense, who will have, a lot of suitors in that kind of scenario. Keeping the program stable and not like knee-jerk overreacting is going to be, in my opinion, just very, very important in this offseason coming up after the season.
Yeah, for sure. I think, at a place like Oklahoma, you should be always I guess you're always coaching for your job, to a certain degree. Obviously, Bob, famously, famous thoughts from Brady. But it's a place like Oklahoma, a place like Ohio State. I mean, look at Ohio State. I mean, all the noise. You just lose 3 games in 3 years. And it's like, get this dude out of here. From a decent, at least a loud section of the fan base. Probably not a large section. Now, if he loses to Michigan one more time, maybe that becomes a very large section of the fan base. Again, same thing for Sark. I mean, Sark just went to the playoffs and stuff. And I had Josh Hickey on the Patreon podcast saying he cannot lose to Oklahoma again. They're like, lose the Georgia game. You cannot lose Oklahoma. You know, it's like already like it becomes a point if he's 1-4. And I'm like, man, he just went to the playoff and it's still that way. I mean, that's the stuff that matters. And Brent, I think, knows how to break down the season in that way, saying beat your rivals, like with the Nebraska thing. He treated that with the utmost respect, and he beat the shit out of that team because he knew it was important to do it. It's important to beat Texas. Now the issue is, obviously losing to Oklahoma State, cheating, the refs, all that type of stuff. But it's like he knows you beat the rivals because that's what matters. You can go, let's say Oklahoma goes 7-5, but they beat Texas. It's a little bit easier for the boosters to say, hey, we handled it. We beat the guy. Win the games that. If somehow Oklahoma goes 7-5, but they beat LSU, Alabama, and Texas, that's kind of like it's a different 7-5 than if they just lose to all the good teams and squeak by all the bad teams. So it just kind of gets maybe the composition of that win-loss is the issue there from that side of it. But to move on and not to belabor the point, go check that out on keyholepod.com. Free to read, free to enjoy. We've got merchandise. We got one T-shirt, working on a second T-shirt. The T-shirts are about the famous games in Oklahoma history. Right now, we have the Taco Bowl shirt up right now. But read all Balance stuff over on the main website. Brady's got some stuff up there as well. But we're going to move on to a nice little thought experiment. We're going to be ranking the SEC coaches. We're going to do this on a tier-based system, so not necessarily 1 through 16. We're going to do this in tiers. I have 4 tiers written down. I do have a 5th one in case we're cowards. Tier 1, your championship coaches. I guess I gave that one away. Tier 2, your conference championship type coaches that can get you at least into the conference championship game. Tier 3, the middle. Tier 4, the bad. And Tier 4, the unknown. I'd rather us not use the unknown, but if we got to, we got to. Okay? So let's go ahead and jump into this. First and foremost, former Oklahoma offensive coordinator Jeff Lebby. Brady, of those tiers, where are you putting Jeff Lebby?
So I think of the things we know about Jeff Lebby that have nothing to do with our opinions of his shitty offense, I think we can safely assume that he will play the game because coaching at Mississippi State is very, very difficult. And you're only really going to succeed there if you have like a schematic advantage, which he will not because that offense sucks. Like Mike Leach had some success there before he passed away, and it's because he's running the funky air raid Mike Leach offense, and that's going to sting some teams here and there. You can succeed over that, or if you just play the game. Like those are the 2 ways that I think you can succeed coaching in Starksville. And so I think over time Jeff Lebby can maybe jump into, I don't know, kind of like the tier that Lane Kiffin is currently in, which is, I think that I guess we'll get there when we get there. I'll put him the tier above like the unknown because it's a tough job. It's his first time being a head coach, but I think he knows how to play the game, and I think that will do well in the SEC.
All right, you got Jeff Lebby in the bad tier. Do we have any disagreements with Jeff Lebby currently in the bad tier?
None.
No, and his father-in-law would be in the bad man tier.
That's also very true. Very true. I do think Brady's right on the playing the game part. If you've seen pictures of Jeff Lebby recently, he's got the Mike Shanahan teeth treatment. If you don't know what that is, go check out.
Oh, really? Oh,
blinding
God.
white. And then he looks like he's dropped about 20 pounds. So maybe he's on the Hollywood drug diet. Not that type of drug diet, but the medical assistance of
The
Ozempic.
Looks like he's on the Ozempic diet as well. He's got to glow up. I'm saying he looks a lot good for him.
The grandfather of his children looked like, when we saw him last, he looked like he had just got out of a North Korean prison. Maybe he's on that diet. Father-in-law, what diet are you using?
Yeah. Okay, next one. Clark Lay, right? Is it Lay?
Lee, I don't know.
Lee, sure. All right, Alan, you answered it first.
Oh.
Where you got Clark?
Clark leaving this a job soon or something like that, right? Like he's I got him in the bottom tier. I don't even think. I mean, like, look, he could be a great coach. We'll never really know. And so in that sense, I'm just gonna rank him down there because I haven't seen anything that would make me think he's put Vanderbilt in a different position than what he inherited.
Yeah, averaging currently, I think 3 wins a season. 3 seasons into it, he has 9 wins total. Basically, still on the mat where Derek Mason left them. And as a reminder, when we're talking about Oklahoma going 8-4, potentially 9-3, 7-5, that would mean like splitting the conference record. As a reminder, James Franklin seems to have gotten the forever job at Penn State by going 4-4 in conference at Vanderbilt one time. So, and again, it's the situation of the job. You go 4-4 at Vanderbilt, you're a great head coach, and you're going to get big time job. You go 4-4 at Oklahoma long enough, you'll be showing the door. So it's just a difference of opinion, difference of situation. Kind of like how I consider Bill Snyder like the greatest head coach of all time, but he never won a national championship. And could he coach at a place like Alabama? Not for sure.
You go 4-4 at Vanderbilt, you can just perpetually coach at Penn State.
Yes. Yeah. I take this back. He also went 5-3 one year in conference. That's probably the year that got him over the top. Not talking about him. Clark, welcome to Tier 4, the bad. All right. I hate to do it to our boy. Matt, Shane Beamer.
Man.
Where do you got him?
It's gonna kill me to put him in bad. It's gonna kill me. But yeah, 7-6, 8-5, and 5-7. That's just it's not gonna get it done. Not gonna get it done. I'll put him in the bad tier.
The bad tier?
It's gonna hurt me to say it. Awesome human tier, but bad coach tier.
What do we in any disagreements with the bad tier? Tier 3 is the middle. Team guys are going to
middle.
Get you,
okay, I messed up the tiers. I thought it was just the good and then the bad at the end and unknown.
4 is the bad one.
4 is the bad
4 is the bad. Okay, I'll go tier 3. I'll go just because he's a good dude, and he's been recruiting pretty well at South Carolina. So we just don't know if that'll turn into wins.
In my mind. I mean, he's a 3-2 maybe. Man, I mean, that's a hard job.
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
like
it's not really fair to be like, he's not winning enough at South Carolina of all places. No, I think that's pretty rough.
Could it be a tougher job than like Iowa State? Because if you think about it, South Carolina has to share a state with Clemson, and they're in the SEC where even though they have a bunch of very talented players in their own backyard, in South Carolina, like the last 15 years, 20 years, they will routinely put in NFL All-Star after NFL All-Star like every few years. But they're in the same conferences like Alabama, Georgia, Florida, like all these. So it doesn't matter.
It's hard. Yeah.
Like you would think with the recruiting ground, it's an easier job. But I think with Iowa State, you can at least, if you get the right guy in charge, you can kind of have this idea of like, well, let's just galvanize around 5-star hearts and just be a well-coached, well-oiled machine. And you can have success in the Big 12. I mean, I don't know. I think South Carolina is just a kind of an unwinnable situation because I'd put him in tier 3 too. I think he's a good coach. I just think it's a really bad I think it's just a really bad job.
That one's on me. I had the tier. That's my fault. I completely missed the middle tier. Sorry.
No, you're good.
I thought
it
just went from conference championship coach to bad and then unknown. So I'm sorry. That one's on me. Sorry, Shane Beamer.
I'll reiterate along for the audience at home. Tier 1 is your championship, like your national championship style coach. Tier 2 is your conference championship style coach. Tier 3 is the middle. Tier 4 is the bad. Tier 5 is the unknown. I'm erasing that because I had that just for Jeff Levy because he's a rookie. So now we just got the 4 tiers. Yeah, I mean, looking at South Carolina, you can win there. Obviously, Steve Spurrier did it, picked up 3 11-win seasons in a row. 11-2 3 times in a row in 2011, 12, and 13. Multiple 9-win seasons there. Lou Holtz was bad. I was about to say he did okay, but he was bad as well. Muschamp was able to get 9 wins a couple of times. And then, yeah, getting up to 8, getting up to 7 and 5, 8. I mean, he's trending in the wrong direction. But maybe just, I don't know. He's in the middle. I think he can get South Carolina, like you said, to a bowl game at South Carolina. I think that is pretty good. You're having to play against Clemson every year, I believe, with their in-state rivalry, the non-conference they have there. That's a tough game. Shane's beaten them, which is interesting. Maybe added some strong stuff there from that side of it. But going 7-6, 8-5, and 5-7. If he goes 4-8 or something like that this next year, obviously he's probably starts sliding down. But for right now, let's hang on to him in the tier 3, the middle. All right, we're gonna back around. Alan, Billy Napier, your boy. I don't know if he's your boy, Billy Napier. I actually really liked him at Louisiana. I thought he was going to be a very, very good head coach the moment he did. I thought he was super, super selective. But maybe now I should have paid attention to why LSU never really knocked on his door all too hard. But
yeah, I mean, there's
sure.
different. Yeah, there are different versions of that story. I'm putting Napier in 4 though. Just I don't know what else we can do. I mean, he's had yeah, there were some roster issues there, but I mean, not to this extent, and he's getting sued.
I was about to say, is there a getting your ass sued off tier?
Yeah,
'Cause he's in that one.
Yeah, I'm putting him last. I'm putting him bottom tier 4.
Yeah, I think he's in the bottom tier. Now, you can sit there, yeah, if I'm a big-time Florida fan and I was like, for some reason, an apologist, I can say, well, the roster thing was issued, Dan Mullen, da-da-da-da-da. Brent Venables is handling very similar circumstances. He currently doesn't have the 45th ranked recruiting class, and he's been able to recruit and improve, like he said, on the big picture things. I'm not for sure Billy's improved the big picture things for Florida. It seems like they're stuck in neutral or in reverse, more than likely, with this hire. And maybe it's just, hey, they had way more talent according, against the teams he played when he was at Louisiana, by being able to keep the in-state kids who didn't go to LSU or other SEC teams, and that kind of drove you to a certain point, kind of like I guess I'm mentioning Scott Frost again. Scott Frost, UCF, having a bunch of Florida talent playing against teams that didn't have it. That can kind of help you out from that side of it. Any disagreements on Billy Napier? Currently in litigation, Billy currently in litigation, Napier being in tier 4.
Currently in litigation tier, yes.
Yeah. Currently in litigation.
Won't be entitled to compensation once he gets his ass canned. Billy Napier.
All right. Moving on. This one hurts me mainly because of the photo that I'm going to have to use. Maybe that's for this graphic. Sam Pittman, who I thought was going to do well. I'm a big fan of offensive lineman hires. Where are we putting Sam Pittman? Brady, it's back to you. Sam Pittman,
Bad.
What tier is he going in? Bad. Quick.
Bad.
Quick
bad.
answer.
Yeah, bad. Did they win 10 games his first year? Because I know they beat Texas that year. They went
9-4, I think.
9-4.
Yeah,
9-4, 7-6, and now 4-8.
I'd be curious to know what their schedule was. See if that was kind of a product of their schedule. No, just like I think Arkansas and Florida, like a lot of these schools in the SEC, and coincidentally, they're the schools that OU isn't playing in 2024, are all stuck in their own little versions of the 90s. For trigger warning to our OU fans who are older and remember the 90s. But there's just a whole bunch of, we don't know what our identity is. We think we do, so let's go in that direction. Oh wait, that doesn't work for whatever reason. And like the worst thing you can say about Sam Pittman is that everybody knows who the head coach is going to be by the end of the season. And it's, thank God he's still alive and still with us after that tragic motorcycle accident he went through, a decade ago. But Petrino is going to be their head coach at some point in the season. I don't know what Arkansas' schedule looks like, but by mid-October, if Petrino is like the interim coach,
Arkansas' schedule is tough. It's tough.
Yeah. If Petrino's the interim coach by October, is anybody shocked? That's where we're going. So unfortunately, and the saddest thing for like the Billy Napiers and the Sam Pittmans is Saban's retired. where are these guys going to go when they get the shit can? Yeah, like,
Is
where are they
Kirby
gonna
just
go
going to
to?
be? Is Kirby going to take on that mantle to the
Kirby's like, I'm
rehabilitation?
not here to mentor you sons of bitches. Hell no.
Man, that 21 year, they beat Texas in the non-conference 40-21.
Yeah, they started Hudson Card that day, I think.
They got smacked by Georgia 37-0. They lost to Auburn, lost to Ole Miss in a 52-51 game. Just no defense in that one, and then they lost to Alabama by 7. Wins over LSU though, wins over Texas A&M, and then just a free fall.
Yeah, he's bad.
Arkansas
is also bad. So
yeah,
you know,
he's bad. I think once you're put into a position to where your administration forces you to hire Bobby Petrino, you're bad. You know, it just sucks for you. Sorry, I would have walked away from the job. I mean, I guess you can't walk away because then you won't get the money.
Oh no, yeah, you ride that out. You are firing me in that case.
Exactly. Get me fired. I would just start driving to the facilities on a Harley just every day, just see if I can get a fight started. You know, something. I mean, the Halloween costume would have been awesome if I were Sam Pittman, having to pull that trigger on that one. So we are now 5 coaches in, 1 in Tier 3, Shane Beamer the middle, 4 in the bad. Sadly, Oklahoma has to play one of those. Wait, yes. We don't get Mississippi State. Okay, moving on. Mike, Elko, Matt.
I'll take this one. Let's go Duke, baby. Let's go Duke. I love what he did for the Blue Devils. Love that. But man, yeah, I'll put him in the same tier as Beamer. I liked what he did at Duke, man. He had some good defenses. I mean, getting Riley Leonard there at Duke, and you know, obviously he's at Notre Dame now, but Elko maybe in like the did you hire a basketball coach tier? Like, are you trying to hire the Duke basketball coach? No, but I think this is Mike Elko is the fan approved version of Mark Stoops tier. I think that's the tier I'm putting him in. He's basically Mark Stoops, but he was just at Duke. I think
Mike Krzyzewski was seen at a College Station Charleston's prior to
yes,
that.
He was. What's the Charleston's version down there in College Station? I haven't spent much time down there, but they need their Charleston's equivalent. No, I think Mike Elko is a good coach. To be honest, I think him and it's crazy to me that I guess just because Mike Elko is already there, but that the A&M fans got so up in arms that they were hiring Mark Stoops, and then they basically hired Mark Stoops, but he had just been there before. That's like the only reason. So I don't know. I think this is a hire that A&M, I think that it was like a smart hire instead of going after another Jimbo type. Just like they need someone to come in there and just, I don't know, not make it a country club, if you will. I think that he's going to be a pretty good coach. Now, does that translate to wins? I don't know, right? Especially not right away.
It translates to 8 wins, Matt.
That's true. Yeah.
Exactly.
I did see their over under win total was 8.5. I was like, I don't know if they can make that jump. I don't know if they can make that jump, man.
I mean, they have 8 in the logo.
Here's why I think it's silly to have national college football people, because there are just too many schools. And you get asked to form your opinion on a school that you might have went and talked to them like last spring. Like I went and talked to the coaching staff last spring. It's like, well, it's fucking August now. Who cares what they said? Anyway, Mike Elko coaches at Duke. He coaches a 9-win team. Really cool. That's great.
Oh yeah, he does.
And the reason why that's great is because this is Duke. If you win 6 games or more, it's like, ooh, that's pretty good. And so you know, people like assume like great coach, just really good coach. Like he's so good, blah, blah, blah. I'll remind you, this is the ACC. This is a conference that is worse than the Big 12. Meanwhile, Brent Venables, who won 10 games at OU last year, is like, well, you know, let's look at all the teams that they beat. And like, yeah, they beat Texas, but who cares? It didn't matter. And all these teams were bad that they just beat a bunch of bad teams. And OU has a much higher level of a standard. So like 10 wins is somewhat like, yeah, we expect that. Like you don't get a banner for that here. So I guess that's kind of why like national types are like, I don't know about Brent Venables. But Mike Elko was good at Duke in the ACC in the post Brent Venables, Dabo Sweeney, Clemson era. I'm sorry. Like, I think I think he's a good hire on paper because he seems to be a football coach and not Jimbo Fisher. So good on A&M for recognizing that we don't need a clown caricature of a head coach. We at least got an adult in the room. I don't know if that adult in the room is going to go north of 8 wins though. So I think that that's just silly that, again, it's the same shit I always bitch about every week. So you use your logic for us here, but you don't apply it anywhere else because of reasons. Whatever, cool. Be a national college football guy.
All right. Any disagreement with Mike Elko in tier 3, the middle? All right. Back to Alan. Alan, this one pains me because I think I'm going to have a disagreement here. I think I might be the only one on it. Hugh Freeze of Auburn. Where do you got Hugh Freeze?
This is a tough one. I think that, man, I think I'm putting Hugh Freeze in tier 3. I know that goes against the national narrative. I know that everybody thinks that he's a genius here, but I mean, he's for one thing, he's just tempted fate too many times. I mean, you hire Hugh Freeze, you know that the potential for embarrassment is, I mean, just super high. I think that his teams he made his bones, I mean, winning an absolute, just the luckiest game we've ever seen, beating Alabama back in 2014 and did it 2 times in a row. I mean, he does a good job of kind of zeroing in on those big games. But like not really being able to follow through year after, consistently. I mean, you look at last year, I mean, played Georgia tough, got smoked by New Mexico State, for example. I mean, just stuff like that. Now, uh, I think, kind of my last point here is you could point to his run at Liberty and say, well, look what he did there. Man, I mean, Liberty is so far outclassing everybody in that conference. I believe they're in Conference USA, right? Yeah. They are so far and away better in terms of resources and whatnot. Like, it's going to be a while before I think Liberty even loses like a conference game. So that doesn't really impress me that much. So yeah, I'm putting Hugh Freeze in tier 3.
Okay, I
Coach
I
from a
was
damn
going
medical
to
bed.
say, yeah, I was going to say tier 2, but after looking at it, he only had one double-digit win season at Ole Miss, 10-3 year at 2015, and as Alan's eloquently put it, I think convinced me very strong not to offer that disagreement. I'm cool with him being in tier 3. Matt, Brady, Hugh Freeze, tier 3. We good to go?
He's a poor man's Gus Malzahn. Gus Malzahn actually got places.
Was he a prostitute coach? Is he the ones that was at the prostitutes?
They
on his
prefer sex worker.
on his work
Sex
phone.
worker. Oh,
Arranging
nice.
that on his work phone.
He's on
Gotta do it on
the
the work phone.
Yeah, he's on the Rick Pitino tier for me. So there you go.
Good
Yeah,
tier.
I'm fine with good. I'm fine with good.
Juicy tier. All right. I saved this one. This is by luck. I'm just following this ranking that I have in front of me. Brady, the head coach of Kentucky, Mark Stoops. Where do you have him at on your tier system? Again, let's not project anything onto any other Stoops familial connections, but where do you have Mark Stoops? What he has done at the University of Kentucky?
I like Mark. I think he's a really good coach. I just think he coaches at Kentucky. Now, the weird thing is that he outlasted Calipari, and I never, ever, ever would have guessed that. Like, it's incredible that he's still there and relatively well thought of, a winning coach. And Calipari's like, I'm a pig suey now. Whatever. Walmart money. No, I think it's kind of like the Shane Beamer thing on steroids, where I think the head coach of this program is really good. I just think that the program that they coach doesn't necessarily set you up for success. And the fact that Mark has been a winning coach consistently at Kentucky, I think that really says something. Obviously, he tried to take a step up with Texas A&M, and I don't know who fumbled that, but it was fumbled. That would have been a step up in terms of you. Mark Stoops is now at a program where, like, if you string together 2 or 3 7-win seasons, it's not going to be that's cute. It's Kentucky. Like, people there have stupid expectations, and they would be upset. Now, like, that's A&M's history. They should, read a book and be happy with it. But that's just the reality of the matter. So he's not a conference championship coach, I don't think. So I'll put him in just. I feel like we're putting all these guys in good. I think
the middle doesn't necessarily mean good.
The middle. Yeah. I guess that's, middle. Man, I think he's good though.
This is the hard part. I'm pushing up.
If Kentucky had Texas schedule, Matt, do you have Kentucky's schedule handy? If Kentucky had,
pull that up, Matt.
If they were on like the good side of their like roster management, where it's like, oh, okay, we've got like a bunch of seniors and juniors and we've got a really experienced team, and then they have Texas schedule like in conference, I could see them getting to a conference championship game. And then we all kind of think like, well, they're going to get blasted by whomever they play because they're there purely because of a product of their schedule. But it's like, Mark Stoops still got Kentucky to a conference championship game. So I think that the capability is there. It's just Kentucky it's more to do with the school and less to do with him. So I could go either way, like 2 or 3.
They start out with Southern Miss, then week 2, South Carolina. They host Georgia, they host Ohio, go to Ole Miss, host Vandy, go to Florida, host Auburn, go to Tennessee, host Murray State, go to Texas, and host Louisville.
Yeah, that's tough. And I have no idea what Kentucky is expecting in terms of like the talent they have coming back this year. I don't know if they're like young or old or whatever, but that's a tough schedule. But if they have an easy schedule and some talent returning and they got a dynamic quarterback, I could see people saying like, yeah, they can win 9 or 10 games and get to the SEC title game to be the sacrificial lamb for Georgia or whomever, and they'll be happy with their season.
All right. Do we have any disagreements? Is Mark Stoops in tier 3 the middle?
No, he's a tier 1.
Just like his brother.
I'm being legit serious. He's tier 1. Look at the history of Kentucky
National championship
football.
Style coach.
If you put him out of, well, yeah, I mean, like, look, again, if you take him out of Kentucky, I think, and put him somewhere else, I think
he's desperately been trying to do.
You're talking about a guy. He's been there for 11 years. Okay, he's coached Kentucky for 11 years. That doesn't happen. Like, go back and look. I don't know the last time they've never had a coach that, I mean, like some of the more recent guys, you're talking about like maybe 6, maybe 3. I mean, it's just not happening. And on top of that, he's got a higher winning percentage than any Kentucky coach since Blanton Collier, who was, heading the program. Well, pardon me. No, he's got a better winning percentage than Blanton Collier. It's Bear Bryant from 1946, 1953, won 70% of his games there. I mean, 53% of your went like, maybe I'm just looking at this differently because Kentucky was so awful, like back in the day when I was younger. But I don't know, man. Like I feel like you put him in a better program, and like you're going to start seeing some significant gains.
All right, so Kentucky has 4 double-digit win seasons in its history. Mark Stoops has 2 of them. Mark Stoops then starts beating Florida. They're beating Tennessee. I mean,
and he's doing it. While Saban's there, he's doing it while Georgia's rising. I mean, all that stuff, And
then also, as was mentioned, took out his chief rival in a pure Tyrell way. Like, I want Calipari to know it was me. Type of a way there. I'm going to split. Okay. On the side note, I'm listening to a podcast called Dictators, and I just finished episode 15. of a 30 episode about Hitler. So I'm going to use some dictator cutting down the center here.
Norm
Tier
Macdonald.
2.
The more I listen about this guy, the less I like him.
That Hitler guy was a bad egg.
We're going to do tier 2 for Mark Stoops. I'm going to split the difference there. I think he is a great coach. I think if he were as good as a tier 1 coach, I think he would be not coaching at Kentucky. Now maybe it's because of his contract makes him, A&M didn't want to give a raise on. They didn't want to, Jimbo was making $10 million. In order to get Mark Stoops, they would have had to pay $10 million. So they got like a Dollar General version. Mike Elko's probably potentially just as good, but currently, a Dollar General version of him on the cheap, comparatively having to pay Mark Stoops, $10 or $11 million a year to come from Kentucky. I think he's very, very good. Then you kind of get into the whole Mike Gundy situation, like that type of thing. If Mike would have taken the Tennessee job, or if he would have taken the Florida State job, or if he would have taken the yada yada job, he would have won national championships. Well, he didn't, and he doesn't seem to want to. So is that the difference there? Mark does seem to want out of Kentucky. I think he's realized the ceiling of that job is where he's got it, and to get it to where out of 11 seasons, 7 of them are winning at Kentucky. That's big time stuff. Could he do a national championship style there? I'm not entirely for sure. I don't know the ins and outs of Kentucky recruiting and what sort of apparatus he has in that point in time. But maybe, if you put him in Ohio State, the recruiting part takes care of itself at the like top upper echelon type of a thing. It's just a coach either has it or doesn't. But yeah, I think tier 2 for sure with a bullet.
I like tier 2, and the fact that I keep coming back to this, that I like tier 2 because the A&M fans really did not want him, and that tells me everything I need to know. I think he's pretty good. I think he's pretty good.
But he's in 2 for me. That won me completely over. Fucking losers.
All right, now we've got Matt coming up, the dreaded Darth Vader of the SEC. Eli Drinkowitz, where do we have the Mizzou head coach currently in here? I'm assuming tier 1. Is that what we got him in?
No.
Oh.
Man, I want so bad just to be salty to put him in the bad tier. Just to be salty, I'll put him in good. Eli Drinkwitz, I've said this many times. He is the biggest fucking dork on the entire planet. And just going through his Wikipedia page and seeing like, who do I need to be pissed off at for letting this man get to any sort of position of power? It's Gus Malzahn. So fuck you, Gus Malzahn, for giving this guy any sort of job in this and allowing him to rise in his head coaching.
I need to see a picture of them side by side. Oh my God. I didn't know that. I had no idea.
This is going to be important to distinguish what I'm saying. He looks like, not saying that he looks like the biggest pervert in the entire world. But I will say, like, I don't like Eli Drinkwitz. I don't at all. If you can't tell, one season at Appalachian State,
at the Millhouse.
One season at Appalachian State in the Sun Belt Conference. Appalachian State, that feels like one of those nailed on Power 5 jobs, similar to what Alan was talking about with Liberty. Like that's nailed on. You have to really try to be bad in your conference at Appalachian State at Liberty. Goes 12-1, immediately gets the Missouri job. He goes 5-5, 6-7, 6-7. Finally goes 11-2. And is probably going to have a good year this year because their schedule fucking sucks. So I want to put Eli Drinkwitz in bad because he has more losing seasons than he does winning seasons. 5-5 is a 500 season. So sorry. But I will put him in good just because, they did good last year and they're probably going to do good this year because they have one of the best players in college football and the a schedule that is very, very cake.
Man, you really, really like Caden Green, calling one of the best players in college football.
You put him in good?
I don't want to.
The middle.
I don't want to. The middle. Sorry, the middle.
So the middle is kind of like they could be good, they could be bad. They're kind of in that purgatory.
I think
put him in unknown.
Bad, man.
Put him in unknown.
I think he's bad. Draw me a picture of like.
I want to put him in bad.
Draw me a picture of any type of culture that we think, oh, that's why Luther Burden went there. Oh, that's why Caden Green transferred to Missouri. Oh, that's why Williams-Nwaneri chose Missouri. They all fucking went there because they got paid to. Eli Drinkowitz, Brady Trantham could be the head coach of Missouri, and I would have those three players if I was the head coach right now, because the donors at Missouri did not want to lose those three players to Oklahoma. Luther Burden committed to OU. Caden Green was on our fucking roster. Williams-Nwaneri was pretty much like probably going to go to OU or going that direction until the money train started rolling in. They had a soft schedule, and he's got two very talented players already on the team last year. That to me is like the Gene Chizik thing when he had Cam Newton. No one thought Gene Chizik was the coach of the year that year. If he was actually the 2010 coach of the year, I apologize, but that's a joke if he was, because everybody knew why that team was good, and it was because of Cam Newton. Everybody knows why Missouri was good last year. They've got Luther Burden, who's really, really good, and their schedule sucked. That's it. Nowhere in that descriptor did I mention Eli Drinkowitz's name. So I think he's bad. He's bad until proven otherwise. And even if they beat OU has lost to plenty of bad coaches and bad teams in my time as an OU fan. So that would prove very little. They not only have to beat OU, they need to repeat, double-digit wins for me to go okay, maybe he's actually kind of a threat to us now.
I'm with you. I'm putting him back in bad. I'm putting him back in bad. Thank you, Brady. Thank you, Brady. He does. And also, the 5-5, 6-7, 6-7. I've brought this up before. It actually pissed me off. And I'm not a Josh Heupel defender by anything. Whatever. His time at Oklahoma was his time at Oklahoma. Last national title winning quarterback for OU. That's good. I'm not sitting here being huge fanboy over Josh Heupel. What Eli Drinkwitz did to him after whenever they went to their handshake line this year after Missouri beat Tennessee, and says, "We stand on business, Josh." After that, after they got fucking pile drived the previous 2 years by Tennessee by 40 fucking points both years, that pissed me off. I was like, okay, you win one game over Tennessee and you're giving it the fucking big one here. Get out of here. No, I hate Eli Drinkwitz.
Alan, where do you got him?
Man, I don't care enough to argue
Sorry.
that he should be worth better. No, I don't think he's that great by any stretch. I 3 is fine by me.
And this thing has him.
We got 1 and 3 and 2 and 4. So
this article has Eli Drinkwitz ahead of Mark Stoops.
Yeah, that's a no. Yeah, no.
That's insane.
He's a 3 in my book. He's a 3.
It's 3 in your book. You're being overruled by the 2 4s. We have Eli in the bad tier.
I like it.
I will say you got 5-5, 6-7, 6-7. That's tough to weigh on you. And then you've got the 1 year that kind of booms, and you have to kind of think, how did that happen? They had, they played the schedule just right. They barely beat K-State, on a walk-off kick, and that probably got the team to buy in kind of hardcore and got boosted. Again, it's important to beat your rivals. K-State, Missouri, rivals from back in the day, a Big 8 for our young fans, Big 12 as well, Big 12 North. But you have a coach that's not too far in the past in which you can say that is what a great Missouri head coach looks like in Gary Pinkel. He was taking care of business in the Big 12, which when it was good. When it had good teams and stuff like that. You had Texas, you had A&M still, you had Nebraska still, you had obviously Oklahoma State was the 2011 team. You had a lot of good teams coming out of the Big 12 which were playing for national championships. It seems weird from that side of it.
And they did well last year. I'm sorry to keep going on this. Yeah, they beat Kansas State on a last-second field goal, 60-whatever-yard field goal, after Eli Drinkwitz tried to lose that game, by the way. He actively almost threw that game. The week before, they beat Middle Tennessee State by 4, 23-19.
Oh yeah, and their fans were booing Brady Cook off the field.
Yeah, and then they finally went on a run. They played Georgia close. They played Georgia within 9 points, and then they beat Florida by 2 after Billy Napier was lucky not to get fired.
Let me just do other fans that are listening to the show a favor real quick. because when we get to Brent Venables, it's going to seem like, hey, we're doing the thing that I bitch about where we're not applying the same logic. Brent has the benefit of the doubt because he's only been a head coach for 2 years. If we were going into year 3 of Eli Drinkwitz, where he's 5-5, then 6-7, I would probably say, like, I mean, he inherited a down bad program. He won one more game in his second year. It's the toughest conference in the country. Like, I'd probably put him in the middle because I've not seen enough. We have seen enough now. And even in their good year, it's like they didn't win because of him. They're not winning because of him. Whatever. So that's why. Like, so disclaimer for when we get to Brent Venables, he's only been a head coach for 2 years.
All right, Alan. I'll try to keep this fast on you. You've got Josh Heupel. Where do you got him?
Who's that?
Ooh, man. I mean, the track record kind of speaks for itself. Like, I think he has to go with being 2. Like, there's no, I mean, looking at what he has, he has an undefeated season, right? Like an undefeated regular season at UCF, right? I mean, he's brought Tennessee back to a level of respectability they haven't had in a while. To me, he's a 2.
I have him at 2 as well. To me, yeah, he's won everywhere he's been, even though every fan base is like begrudgingly accepted him as a head coach.
Now he could
sure
slip. He could slip. Like, I mean, the way I feel like it may go for Tennessee, he could fall down. But right now, 2.
All right. We're going to try to speed through this some. We've got some people we got more hatred on here. One of them might be the one coming up. Brian Kelly, head coach of LSU, famously Southern man. Where do you got him in your tiers?
Murderer tier.
His father was a Kentucky colonel. I got to put him in tier 1. I don't think that I don't think he's that good. But because of track record, and a lot of this is me applying track record, I think he's a proven coach who can take a program to the highest of highs. I don't know. I mean, now winning the damn thing is a different story, but LSU is just kind of in Lincoln Riley mode right now where it's like, well, if they just get their defense back, they would be pretty damn frightening. It is what it is. I mean, I think LSU is better equipped to have that kind of lazy take of if they just get a defense back because they're located in Louisiana, like they're going to get defensive players that like most programs are envious of. And if they can put it together with a talented offense, a talented quarterback, and a really good defense, like they're gonna be in the forefront to win a national championship. Unfortunately, now the good thing for the good guys this year is their quarterback is named Garrett Nussmeier, and that is a Jag name. That is not a name that strikes fear in the hearts of criminals, of good people, like whatsoever. Like, so even if they learn how to tackle this year, I don't think they're going to be able to score enough because they don't have a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback under center.
He's just Zach Mettenberger. That's all he is.
Ugh.
Garrett Nussmeier, Zach Mettenberger.
All right, we've got Brian Kelly, tier 1.
I'm going tier 2, and you can hear my logic on
He's
this.
Never won a conference. Never won a conference
being...
title.
Yeah, Notre Dame, way to go.
Point taken. Yeah.
I guess
there's only one coach on this list that has won a national title while being a head coach. So that's why I'm only saving him for the first tier, but I'm cool with being overruled on that. So I'm going to go second tier, Brian Kelly.
All right, you're going to split the vote. What do we got here, Alan? Tier 1 or 2? Or
he's tier 1 to me, man. He's done a lot of winning everywhere. Like Cincinnati, Grand Valley State, all over the place. He's tier 1 in my book.
All right. That means, Matt, you get Steve Sarkisian, hated head coach of the Texas Longhorns.
All right, Steve Sarkisian.
Tier 4.
Yeah, there you go. Put it right there. Let's go. End of discussion. No. I really wanted to put him in tier 2. I think he's just good right now. Go back and look at his entire coaching record. It's not very impressive.
7-win Sark
at all.
He's
only had one double-digit win season. It was last year. So I don't know. I want to put him in tier 2. I guess, I mean, they just won the conference title and just went to the playoffs. So I guess that would be a vote for that. But entire coaching career, not that good.
I think the best thing you could say about Sark is that he makes Quinn Ewers like a playoff caliber quarterback, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like that's
Sure.
when Quinn Ewers does well, I'm like, man, that was a great play design by Sark, man. That's yeah, he's in 2. Like he's a 2.
Allen, Sark.
I don't know. He's like a 1 offensive coordinator. I don't think he's a great head coach. I mean, like I know everybody wants. I think everybody really wants him to be a great head coach. Everybody. I mean, and there's a good story there. I personally, the guy seems like a good dude. I mean, I get, but it's like, does this one season like override everything else?
Right.
Like everybody was
Yes,
like,
yes, it does, Alan.
I mean, I don't know, man. I guess I'll say 2, but but the entire media industry, I think, is way out too far on him. Like that's a big case of recency bias and probably wanting Texas to be a better story.
It's just
Yeah,
insane.
The sheen of Texas is on him so
Mhm.
much. I was going to override everyone and say tier 3, but
I'm okay with it.
I'm
Yeah,
cool
we-
with tier
said
3.
tier two.
I had tier 3.
I'll do my very quick thing for tier 3. He has not won at this level in any way, other place, shape, or form. He played against a down Big 12. Will play against the easiest schedule in the SEC next year, 2 years in a row potentially. Everything is set up for him to win at Texas. He's, in my opinion, doing what is expected of him to do. Now you remember his first couple of years, Texas was way out ahead of everybody, and then they wouldn't score for like 2.5 quarters or something like that, and they'd lose a game. I mean, there was something very strange happening at that point in time. I think things just lined up for him. Was able to pick up the former TCU head coach to be, co-defensive coordinator for for a season, and really kind of tied things up. Things fell in his lap at that point in time. I'm going to say he's tier 3, but all 3 of you said tier 2, so we're going to leave him there. Moving on. Who was that? Brady, Lane Kiffin. I've kind of pre-filled this one out. I could not figure out where to put Lane Kiffin.
Oh, he's in 3. Like he's not. I don't take him seriously. I think he's more. I think he coaches more for like the splash, and I mean that's a career trajectory thing for him as well, because he always made splashes in order to climb up in the coaching world. And I think he does the same thing if he's at a program for a long enough time. Like Ole Miss is a splash program. Ooh, we got this transfer. Ooh, we got this guy. Ooh, we got this transfer. But when like push comes to shove, they can't beat Alabama. They can't beat Georgia. When it comes down to it, like Ole Miss is just not that program either. So I think he's a good coach in terms of getting your program like notoriety that you would otherwise not get, and it might yield you some short-term success, but I think that success has a hard ceiling on it. So he is he's going to be a tough challenge for OU this year, but in the grand scheme of things, he's not a coach that I'm like losing sleep over, like, oh shit, we got to play Lane Kiffin. So he's mid.
All right. Tier 3 for Lane Kiffin.
Yes.
All right, I'm seeing yeses on that one. Matt, Kalen DeBoer. What tier you got him in?
Oh, geez.
I think this one's.
I'll say 2. Yeah, I'll say 2.
Yeah,
Tier
I think 2. Pretty clear and simple. Potentially 1. He's won
3.
everywhere he's been.
Yeah.
Literally
1.
everywhere he's been.
1.
3.
1?
Wow.
Oh.
This is the one where we're all over the map.
We're all over the place.
I
Why,
think he
Alan?
look at where
He wins everywhere.
He wins everywhere. Now, has he
Everywhere.
won the whole thing? No, but he's going to a school
I mean,
that
he
can't.
Got
didn't
close.
do it at Fresno State or Washington. Like, oh well. Like, no, I mean, nah, man, he's won in my book.
They're not. It's not going to work at Alabama. Not because
may
he's not
not.
Southern, not
Yeah,
because
that's
of
true,
that
true.
shit. It's not. I don't think it's going to work. I don't. They're not going to get the short term success that they want, and you can't follow Nick Saban. I'm sorry, that's a rule. That cannot happen.
Yeah, it's much easier to be the guy after the guy who was after the guy, obviously. So we got a tier 1 out of Allen, tier 2 of the Matt, tier 3 out of Brady, I think is what he mentioned there.
Yeah, whatever
I'm
his
gonna
next
split
head
that and say tier 2 as well.
Okay.
I think
Whatever
with
his
the super easy opportunity to jump to tier 1.
whatever his next head coaching gig would be after Alabama, he'd be good. That'll be good.
All right. Kirby Smart, tier 1. I'm going to
Yep.
go ahead and say that. Done and done there. This allows us to get to Brent and allows us to help Alan with his other time duties here. Brent Venerables, we'll start with Alan. Where do you got him? You just wrote this wonderful article about how we should set expectations for him. But Brent Venables, what tier do you have him in?
Well, man, like I'm gonna go ahead and say tier 2 because I like him because it's my show. But like I don't know. I mean, if I was somebody else, I'd probably say 3. But no, I'm fine with putting him in 2. I think OU's going in the right direction. I think that he's doing a good job of cleaning up a big mess. So I'm gonna go. I'm fine putting him in 2.
So we're going to go tier 2 without necessarily the results in which we would expect out of a tier 2. Brady, Matt, tier 2, Brent Venables.
I would have said tier 3, bordering on unknown. But I'll go tier
Yeah.
3. I'll go tier 3. He followed up his 6 and 7 year with a 10 and 3 year. Like, I mean, that's obviously showing signs of you're doing something right. Not like he didn't pull Eli Drinkwitz where he went 500 or below 500 3 years in a row. So
Yeah, we haven't
Right.
seen Brent Venables be the head coach of the program yet. We've seen Brent Venables, the defensive coordinator, and the guy who hired Jeff Levy, but I don't know if that's going to be a good thing. I hope that it's going to be a good thing, and I think it's going in that direction, but it could be a bad thing. So he gets the benefit of the doubt. That would mean that I kind of want to push him into tier 2 because I think that capability is there, and we've got the talent. I mean, we will always have that talent. But based on track record, like I think you just have to put him at 3 and be happy with it.
All right. I think
I would not object to putting him in 3. But
I'm going to push at this point in time. So if you look at the people in tier 3, it's Shane Beamer, Mike Elko, Hugh Freeze, Lane Kiffin. I think on the big picture stuff, Brent Venables is better than all of those guys. He's recruiting at a level that those dudes do not touch. And does not have the ability, have not shown to have the ability to improve a team by as much as he's improved at University of Oklahoma over the year that he had from 2022 2023. The hard part for him is obviously only 16 wins. I say only 16 wins, 10 losses. University of Oklahoma in 2 seasons. That's where it might be weird. I'm going to say tier 2 just because it's the Oklahoma podcast. And I think, as we've talked about earlier on the podcast, he's doing the stuff. He's doing all the right things, right? He's taking vitamins, he's eating the vegetables, he's getting the protein, he's doing all the stuff you have to do to build the foundation correctly. And I think a lot of these other coaches aren't doing that, and they're chasing. Like Eli is like chasing wins. I don't know if that program is being built. I mean, just look at where they're recruiting. I think they're like 10th or 12th in the SEC currently, something like that right now. I'm not for sure if that's being built to last. Brent is at least being a program builder. How much does that get you when at the end of the day you get fired because of wins and losses? I'm going to do another dictator thing, push for him to be a tier 2. Are you going to overrule my dictatorship?
Hey, we spent 2 or 3 months like talking about Jackson Arnold, the turnover machine, because of an Alamo Bowl that doesn't matter. If Jackson Arnold sniffs his potential this season, OU has a top 2 quarterback in the conference, therefore maybe a top 4 or 5 quarterback in the country. And the guy who's coaching him is probably in tier 2 at the very least.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I know, Alan, you mentioned you got to roll pretty soon. So I think we had a pretty good fun time here with this one. So I want to quickly through here. Tier 1, Kirby Smart, Brian Kelly. Tier 2, Mark Stoops, Josh Heupel, Steve, Kalen, Brent. Tier 3, Shane Beamer, Mike Elko, Hugh Freeze, Lane Kiffin. Tier 4, Jeff Levy, Clark Lee, Billy Napier, Sam Pittman, Eli Drinkowitz. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You got 9 coaches in the SEC of the 16 teams that are either in the middle purgatory or just bad. So you're leaving 7 coaches in which Oklahoma. Now Oklahoma will have to play against Kalen DeBoer, Steve Sarkisian, Josh Heupel, Brian Kelly. So they're playing against a lot of the good coaches. And Steve Sarkisian and his team, they get to play against a lot of the bad coaches. So maybe that's just kind of where it ends sometimes when that wins and losses there.
We didn't draw old Clark Stroud or whatever his name is from Vanderbilt.
I want to go ahead and tie that up. I think we had a really fun time here kind of breaking that stuff down. If you guys disagree with our tier listings, I'll have this posted on keyhole.pod and try to add some, some flavor to this as well, kind of writing this stuff down. Have some fun with it. We're all going to be called major homers for having Brent in tier 2. I would, again, point to the recruiting and having that be something that's very strong. I think bad coaches don't recruit like this. This is my personal opinion. Just bad coaches don't recruit at this level and continue to recruit at this level. Potentially bringing in, averaging out like a top 6 class over 3 seasons, which would be higher of an average than what Lincoln Riley, the wonder recruiter, ever did at Oklahoma. If he's able to hold on to this class and win some games this year. So thank you, Vanessa House, for sponsoring us and having fun with us. Thank you to all of our Patreon supporters for supporting us and allowing us to keep our lights on. One day I'll be able to build a bookshelf behind me. And thank you to Alan, Brady, and Matt as well for being on this fun ride with us. So I'm going to sign off as we always do. So for myself, for Alan, for Matt, for Brady, for
One of
Vanessa
us.
House, for all of them. Boomer!